In this series I want to explain why I think cables do make a difference. There is no short answer to this, so I decided to make separate videos for all the different arguments. One argument I often hear is, all cables are the same. Today I address build quality to show you that that is not true. Enjoy! So let's have a look at loudspeaker cables. A loudspeaker cable is nothing more than a plus to get the signal to your loudspeaker and a return, and that's it. Now, if we look at the build quality, this is probably the cheapest kind of loudspeaker cable you can find, and what you see is that it has just a tiny bit of material to transport your music signal, and if we wind it together as you would do, you see this is just very thin. Now remember, you have your power amps, you have your heavy rock music, and you want to transfer all that power to your loudspeakers, and this is all you give it. This is loudspeaker cable that is also very cheap, and you may recognize it because many people use it. Many of the DIY stores sell you this kind of loudspeaker cable. But also the diameter is very small. If we look at the other side, what they did here to keep it even cheaper is they have the plus going to your loudspeakers. This is copper. This will oxidize quite fast. This is very cheap copper, and what they did, the return, they used even cheaper material to keep the costs down. So this is already a lot better. Twist it. So this is already a little bit better than what we started with. If we move on a little bit to this Van der Hul cable, what you see is they spaced the two conductors because these two conductors will have an effect on each other. In the cheaper wire, they'll be lying right next to each other. And you can see here that the diameter of the material is already a lot bigger. So look at the other side, you can see that this is a completely different system than this little thing that we started with. This is also copper with a silver lining in order to make sure that it doesn't oxidize as fast. Here's another example, a Van der Hul. And you can see these two conductors are spaced even further apart from each other. Let me take the other one next to it. That was this one. But these conductors are also much thicker than the other one that I just showed you. And if we look over here, you can see there is a lot of material. This maybe 0.5 millimeters. This is 8.4. So if you twist this together, you have a much different situation than when you have the very cheap cable that I have over here. Now remember, this was about people saying all loudspeaker cables are the same, it doesn't matter which one you take. But I hope you understand that this and this is not the same, and if you want from your big power amp, you want to transfer all that power to your loudspeaker cables, you can choose between this or this. It's up to you. Here's another example. This is power cable. This is probably the cheapest that you can find. Let's just look at it. First of all, the diameter of the two conductors is very, very small. And this is what it is. When you unravel it, it is just a little bit of material. It has no shielding. And also here, especially when you have a serious power amp, that amp wants to be fed power, juice. And if you use this one, this is all you are going to give it. Now this is cheap, that's why you can use it, but this is not the same as, for example, this is a cable that many people use for a more serious step up, the Ölflex. Now this already is much more, this is flimsy, this is much more sturdy, so there's much more material in the conductor. Of course this has 3 conductors and the cable is shielded, whereas this one is not. Now in the area that we are living in now, shielding is just something that is a good idea, because otherwise the wires can pick up noise from mobile phones, from police signals, from emergency signals. There are so many signals, radio signals going through the airwaves. You do not want to have your cable pick up that noise and add it to what in the end becomes your music. So shielding is a good idea. This has quite a serious diameter and this is not all that expensive. Here's another example. This is from my previous projector. This is what came with it, and when you open it, it's just a tiny little bit of material. It has no shielding whatsoever, so this could pick up noise and it could be part of your sound, your music, your image, anything that is being powered by this thing. So here we have another famous cable that's being used. It has 3 conductors. Also, these cables are being twisted inside this sleeve, and in order to battle EMF, electromagnetic interference, for example. So if we look at the other sides, so what you can see over here is you have your 3 conductors. This is used to keep the cable twisted, to make it a bit more firm. And you have this, which is a ground wire that you can use to connect to your ground on the side of where the power is coming from, not on the side of your equipment. So if this is going from the wall to your power amp, this connection should be made on the side of the wall, not on the side of the power amp. So everything that is being picked up with the shielding over here is being transferred to earth. And also if we take this one, I cut it short now, but if you leave it a little bit longer, you can twist it like that and connect it to your ground wire. Again, only on one side. So this is already much more a serious cable. It does have also, I cut it off, it also has this shielding. It's just a little bit, but it's completely shielded into this aluminium, I don't know. this is just around it throughout the cable in order to minimize the noise getting to your equipment. One of these two cables will do very well. It will not be very expensive, and you'll do your system a favor in getting more, better, cleaner power, not more, cleaner power to your equipment with much more ease. So one more time, if you want your power amp, and power amps can have a requirement for really a lot of power, don't just use these things. Give it a little bit more. Another thing you need, especially in these days with all the streaming going on, is Ethernet cables. Let's just look at the build quality and the difference between the cheapest option you have and just a little bit more money put into that. So here we have a normal, I constructed this myself. This is Cat 6 cable, and if you look at this, it is twisted, as I told you, to have the electromagnetic interference stopped. As you can see, the wire in itself, I don't even know if I can take it off. I'm afraid I will just, you can't hardly even see it. So this is what you use to transport your high definition audio signal. Now here is another cable that I bought, and you can use it to terminate your own cables. This is a bit more expensive, and it has a completely different build. If you look at it, you can see there's some shielding from these wires. Then there is shielding for every set of conductors. And if we open that one, these are twisted as well. Now these are never going to be really thick cables, because otherwise it won't fit anymore. So if we look at these two, they are about the same thickness, but this is more pure. Here's another cable. This is one that you have in a standard delivery with all kind of equipment that you get. So if we open that one, and what you see is that these strands are maybe even thinner, and this one is stranded. This one is solid, and this is stranded. That is what you are going to use to transport your high definition music files. You can do a little bit better with this one, but when I'm here, I have one that I've been using also in my system, which is a bit more expensive, but this is also a very different quality. It's Cat 7 in this case, and I opened up one of these, and what you see is that it has a little bit of shielding of these wires, but because they're not woven very tightly, I don't know if they do anything. But what you see here, which is completely different from this one, what you see here, that every pair of cable is also shielded. And then if we open that, you get the twisted wires. They will always be twisted, and of course if we look at the other wire, this will not be very much thicker wire as we saw with loudspeaker cable and power cords. That is of course because this connector only receives these very small diameters. But what we see here so that took longer than I thought. So now these two are solid copper, but the more expensive one that I just used uses a much more purer copper than this cheap one. So it is up to you whether you have this very cheap unshielded system or this one, which is already a little bit better but not as pure copper as this one is. And what I did, I chose this one, which are very cheap to buy. This is cut 7, and the reason I buy cut 7 is because of the fact that it is shielded so very well. So there you have it. Are you going for this, the cheap one, or pay just a little bit more and have a better construction and something that is better designed to do what it has to do? Or are you going for the cheapest loudspeaker cable instead of paying a little bit more and have that as the transport from your power amp to your loudspeakers? And last but not least, are you going to have the cheapest Ethernet cable that comes with all the stuff that you buy, or are you going to invest a little bit more to have a more decent shielded system to transport all your delicate signals? So we have reached the end of this first video in my series about cables and why cables do make a difference. My argument for this first episode was that just looking at the build quality, it is obvious that not all cables are the same. Does this explain why cables sound different? Well, you need to see the whole series to make up your mind, but better shielding and bigger conductors made from much more pure materials will help your system to optimize its performance. Of course, if you don't think cables make a difference, you can just go with the cheap cables using thin conductors, cheap conductor materials, and no shielding or other design considerations like protections from EMI. Yes, you can do that. That's all up to you. I prefer to spend a little bit more money and take care of my system. Thank you for watching, and I see you in the next episode.